For months now, the experts have been telling us that tariffs are going to destroy the world economy, that Trump inherited a booming economy, and he single-handedly destroyed it. Self-immolation, self-destruction. What is he doing? What is he thinking? Tariffs are a nightmare. And, well, yesterday he emerged from his meetings in Europe, in Scotland in particular, with the European Union, with a trade deal that nobody thought he could achieve. A trade deal that proved all of those experts wrong. And they're admitting it. We'll show you that and savor the sweet smell of success coming up in a minute. First, though, you woke up to this kind of news from the weenie brains over at Axios. Even they have to admit how glorious this deal was. In the Trump-dominated global economy, the U.S. gets plenty, but gives nothing in return. This is, by the way, an American publication. And can you sense that they're actually sad about this? This hurt them physically to have to write it. Like, they think it's a problem that the U.S. is getting so much and others get nothing in return. But of course, the reality is we're playing makeup after decades of foreign countries taking advantage of us and screwing us right where it hurts the most. That's what these deals are all about. And even the head of the European Union admitted that yesterday when she announced this deal. That, again, coming up in a moment. First, though, fast forward to this morning, where the hits kept coming for the Europeans, and most particularly in this image for the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Here he is welcoming the president in Scotland on the island of Great Britain. But, oh, no, wait, I'm sorry. He's not welcoming the president. The president's welcoming him. Because Trump has his own glorious award-winning golf club in Scotland. He's even got the bagpipes playing. It's power move after power move here as Trump, as the president of the United States, flies to Scotland and then welcomes all of these European leaders to his home turf. And of course, imagery means everything in world politics. And you can't tell me that this doesn't set the tone. In fact, look at how they're positioned on the stairs here doing an impromptu press conference. I don't know if Prime Minister Keir Starmer is that much smaller than Trump. Maybe Trump stood on a step higher than him. But he looks like a very small man here. And watch the body language as Trump admonishes the Prime Minister about free speech in the United Kingdom.
Important to free speech today.
Well, free speech is very important. I don't know if you're referring to any place in particular. Perhaps they are, but
we've had free speech for a very, very long time here, so we're very proud of that.
Did you see that move? Oh, free speech is very important. I don't know if you're talking about any place in particular. And he just
what's important to free speech today?
Well, free speech is very important. I don't know if you're referring to any place in particular. Perhaps they are, but
we've had free speech for a very, very long time here. So.
Yeah, but guess who's had it longer, pal? Guess who's had it longer? Sure, you had the Magna Carta, but you didn't actually enforce it right when you've got a totalitarian dictator monarch like King George III. But yeah, good for you with your little free speech. Don't you? Yeah, Trump should have like patted him on the top of the head like Benny Hill and the little bald guy. Yeah, sure, you got free speech. Look at you with your little free speech. Of course, if I stood in front of an abortion mill in England and prayed the rosary silently in my head, I'd be arrested. Sure, you've got free speech. Sure. And then this moment about the mayor of London, who, by all accounts, appears to be an extremist Islamist who hates Western civilization and certainly hates the president of the United States and the United States in particular, if a conservative or a Republican happens to be in the White House. Here's what Trump had to say about the mayor of London, and then watch Keir Starmer, who's his ideological and political pal there in London.
I will. I'm not a fan of your mayor. I think he's done a terrible job, the mayor of London. But, a nasty person. I think he's done. I think
He's a friend of mine, right?
no. I think he's done a terrible job. But I would certainly visit London. Yeah.
You know what he should have done there? Let me be Trump for a quick second, because Trump always plays this great, right? But it would have been so beautiful if on his feet he would have done this.
I think he's done a terrible job, the mayor of London. But the nasty person. I think he's done. I think
he's a friend of mine, right?
Well, your friend is a terrible mayor and he's doing a terrible job. He should have actually personalized it. Oh, he's your friend? Well, your friend sucks. That would have been hilarious.
No, I think he's done a terrible job.
I mean, he basically did do that, right? All right. So that's what happened this morning, and we'll see what comes of their conversations there. But Trump is absolutely standing astride world politics right now and winning at every turn on behalf of the American people and on behalf of our industries and on behalf of our economy. Don't believe me? Well, you don't have to believe me. Even ABC News had to admit it.
A major victory for President Trump that averts a painful trade war between the United States and the European Union. The two trading partners exchange $2 trillion in goods every year. CBS's Weijia Jiang is in Edinburgh, Scotland, traveling with the president. Weijia.
Good evening, Jerika. Heading into trade talks, President Trump set expectations for getting a deal done with the European Union, putting the chances at 50-50. And then after a meeting that lasted just over 1 hour, Trump announced they had reached an agreement.
We have good news. We've reached a deal.
President Trump announced the news from his luxury golf resort in Turnberry, where he hosted the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen.
I think this deal will bring us very close together, actually. It's a partnership in a sense.
It's a huge deal. It will bring stability. It will bring predictability. That's very important for our businesses on both sides of the Atlantic.
The two leaders said the tariff rate for imports from the EU's 27 member countries would be 15%, down from 30% that was set to kick in on Friday. The EU has agreed to purchase U.S. military equipment, $750 billion of U.S. energy, and invest an additional $600 billion in other sectors. And there's good news for U.S. companies that sell to EU nations.
They're agreeing to open up their countries to trade at zero tariff. So that's a very big factor.
It's a huge factor. And once again, just to revisit where we are here, Trump announces the tariffs on what he called Liberation Day, April 2nd, right? And of course, everybody's head explodes. Oh, God, you can't do that. It's going to ruin the economy. And it was 30% tariffs. The latest deadline to negotiate these had been pushed back to the end of this week, August 1st. And at the last minute, this is the deal came up with. It reduces all of those tariffs down to 15%. They're still there. But understand, Europe had tariffs before on us. We had nothing on them. So now we get the income from the tariffs into our treasury. Those are the tariff income dollars that actually put us in surplus for the first time in a decade in the month of June. Remember that. And it also opens up their markets for our products, which they had shut down before. Real easy to buy a Beamer or a Mercedes or a VW here in America, but you try buying a Ford over there in Europe. You could do it, but it's super expensive, more expensive than here. Why? Because they jacked up huge tariffs. They also have a bunch of environmental standards over there that are stupid and they don't make any sense. And all of this has been offset now by Trump's negotiating power. And as positive as that ABC News report, or was that CBS News? I apologize. That's CBS News. As positive as that was, it didn't even tell the whole tale. We'll get into the details of this coming up in a minute. In fact, and specifically about how the Europeans are lamenting it. But here is probably the most important exchange of this entire weekend. When the Chancellor of the European Union is asked by one of the reporters here, after all these details come out, and it's obvious that this is incredibly in favor of American industry and the American people. I want to keep reiterating because I keep saying Trump wins, Trump wins. No, you won. You won. Your bank account won. Your savings won. Okay? The company you work for won. And when the Chancellor of the EU was asked one very simple question, okay, I get it. What concessions did the Americans give here? What did you get from the Americans was the question. Watch this. Watch the answer.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for the EU Commission President. What are the U.S. concessions? What is the U.S. giving up in the deal, if anything?
So the starting point was an imbalance, a surplus on our side and a deficit on the US side. And we wanted to rebalance the trade relation. And we wanted to do it in a way that trade goes on between the two of us across the Atlantic, because the two biggest economies should have a good trade flow between us. And I think we hit exactly the point we wanted to find. Rebalance, but enable trade on both sides, which means good jobs on both sides of the Atlantic, means prosperity on both sides of the Atlantic. And that was important for us.
Did you catch that? What concessions did the U.S. make? Did you watch it? It was 45 seconds long. Did you see what concessions we made? We didn't make any concessions. And she conceded the point that they had to rebalance the relationship because it was so out of balance up until now. They had such a trade surplus with us because of the restrictions that they had been putting on our companies and because we were playing by the rules with free trade and they never were. All of the conservative critics of tariffs, they didn't quite ever concede the point that was just conceded to by the EU, which is, yes, we'd love free trade. In a perfect world, free trade would be great. But we're not experiencing free trade. It's one-sided. We kept things free. They kept us out. And now we've rebalanced it. And I cannot tell you how critically important that concession is to validate, actually, Trump's position on all of this that he's been saying for 30 years before he even got into politics and ran for office. That right there tells the tale. Later, she elaborated on her relationship with the president and how these negotiations went.
I want to thank President Trump personally for his personal commitment and leadership to achieve this breakthrough. He's a tough negotiator, but he is also a deal maker. I want to thank President Trump.
Which is probably the highest praise. Forget about your Nobel Prize. Donald, that's all Donald Trump wants to hear. I'm a tough negotiator and a deal maker. And the deal's been made. Now let's go do the details here. And I want to show you, this is how the American side of it is conveying and communicating what this deal is. In a second, I'm going to show you what European commentators, how they're describing the exact same deals. It's hilarious. They are so angry about this. They're so angry because they know that after 20 years of screwing us, now finally, I mean, they think they're getting screwed. The way we look at it, we're now actually making things a little bit more balanced. But here's what happens. As you saw, the EU buys $750 billion in energy products. Why is that great? Well, first of all, it helps our industries here in America because our energy companies are going to profit off of this. That actually makes energy cheaper here in America, number one. Number two, that means that if the Europeans are buying energy, gas, oil from us, they're not buying it from Russia. If you care about the war in Ukraine, if you care about Putin and you think he's the next Hitler, like all of our superiors and moral intellectual betters kept lecturing us from Europe, that, you know, what is America going to do about Russia? What's America? Okay, well, if you really care about Putin, this is great news for you. Because if they're buying energy from us, they're not buying it from Putin. That means they're not enriching his war machine. Understand something for a second here, okay? Let me just pause here. Set aside the trade deal for a second. Up until now, Europe, countries in Europe, were buying a huge amount of their gas and oil from Vladimir Putin and Russia, while at the same time lecturing us about how we need to pay for Ukraine's defense. They were spending, hear my words, you can fact check it, use whatever AI you want or whatever search engine. The European Union as a whole were spending more money on gas and oil with Russia, giving Russia their money for gas and oil, than they were supporting the Ukrainian war effort. While all at the same time, they were screaming that Putin was Hitler and that we were in some way neglectful because we weren't spending money as much as they wanted us to on the Ukrainian war effort. Meanwhile, they were funding the Russian war effort. They are hypocrites. And now because of this deal, they'll be sending that money to us. That also hurts China too, by the way. If you care about Russia, you care about China, you love this deal. All right, $750 billion there, $600 billion in new investments. Real fast, top of my head, that's $1.25 trillion of either energy purchases or investment, plus more U.S. military equipment purchased from here. Tariffs raised to 15% on most EU goods. European pharmaceutical, that means they're going to have to pay a tariff coming in here. They haven't up until now. European pharmaceuticals not touched on this as a whole. They might look at that later. You could say maybe that's something we gave up on, but that's where it is right now. So we haven't moved from where we are right now on pharmaceuticals. We're just not adding the tariffs to it. Steel and aluminum tariffs stay at 50%. Trump agrees not to raise tariffs on the EU to 30%, zero tariffs on all goods going to the EU. 50% coming in, zero tariffs going out. It's about time we rebalance this. And again, this is Trump using tariffs as a weapon, as a threat, as a tool. So that's how we look at the deal. Want to see how European advisors are looking at it? Take a look. Same details, but look at the commentary. Single 15% rate on cars, pharmaceutical, semiconductors sold as clarity, but locks EU exports into permanent disadvantage. This is Europeans' mindset on it. Replace Russian gas with U.S. energy, price your fuel to kill EU energy sovereignty. U.S. chips will power our AI gigafactories. Europe abandons sovereign tech for dependency on the U.S. Zero U.S. tariffs on semiconductors. Crush EU producers. You see how negative they are about this deal over there? It's fantastic. Hidden betrayals. They believe the EU betrayed their member countries. Car industry hammered, 15% tariff buries EU automakers in U.S. market. Steel, aluminum, fair competition is U.S. quota strangling EU industry. That's not a fair characterization because the tariffs on steel and aluminum are the same. Zero tariffs, exceptions benefit U.S. exporters, aircraft, chemicals, not EU. So this is a European economist who's complaining about these things because they feel like they're getting screwed. If the Europeans think they're getting screwed, that's a great deal for us, you guys. Who else? Oh, look at this guy. Clouseau Investments. Again, it's a European who's covering this stuff. He says he keeps getting away with it. He is Trump. 15 to 20% tariffs with zero retaliation, forced purchases of U.S. energy and military equipment, and commitments to invest hundreds of billions in the U.S. with no action on our part. LMAO, indeed. Bill Mitchell says, so do I have this right? The EU is going to pay us a 50% tariff on exports to the U.S. while charging us 0% tariffs on U.S. goods sold there and promising to buy hundreds of billions of dollars in U.S. energy and arms. Did Trump have pictures of them naked? That's the praise that's being showered on Trump for this. Now, what about the other side of the equation? If our side's praising, what are they saying? Well, how about Financial Times? Financial Times, European perspective, there is no hiding the fact the EU was rolled over by the Trump juggernaut, said one ambassador. Trump worked out exactly where our pain threshold is. How about the Telegraph in the UK? What did the EU get in return for all that? Absolutely nothing. It's meant to be a negotiating superpower, but it does not look that way right now. This is criticism of the European Union from within the continent, or in this case, in the United Kingdom. That's the perspective from over there about what the EU just did. And don't forget, this comes just weeks after Trump got NATO to not only agree to fulfill their decades-long requirement that 2.5% of their gross domestic product go to self-defense, but he actually upped it to 5% when he was being criticized for holding the line at 2%. So it's nothing but winning right now. You know how you know? Because they're screaming about it. Oliver Blanchard from MIT. He's a senior fellow. What I worried about has happened. A completely unequal deal between the U.S. and the EU. Have no doubt, asymmetric 15% tariffs are an EU defeat. When the law of the jungle prevails, the weak have little choice than to accept their fate. But Europe could potentially have been strong, either alone or in a coalition with others. It would have had to be ready for stormy waters, but it would have gotten a better deal in the end and sent a strong message to the world, an opportunity less, not a strong message to the world. What he's saying, he wanted a strong message to America. He wanted the EU to hold the line and spank us, and the EU knew better. Listen, this isn't to gloat or to celebrate or in some way do a victory lap at our trading partners and our friends in Europe's coming up on the short end of this deal. No, this is about being self-satisfied with the fact that we have actually started to get the trade balance back to an equal relationship, which is all we ask for. It's all we've ever asked for. We treat you fairly, you treat us fairly, and you saw the president of the EU conceding that it hasn't been fair and equal up until this point. But the real victory here, the real victory is over the experts that are lamenting this, the experts that are crying about it. Up until this weekend, they were sure that the European Union was just going to sideline the United States and go directly to China and make a big deal with them and leave us out in the cold. And that would shift the global dominance to China, and that was going to benefit them and benefit the Europeans and make Trump look like a fool on the international stage. But it didn't happen. Actually, quite the opposite happened. China is now the odd man out. In fact, China is engaging in negotiations in Stockholm with our Secretary of Treasury today as we speak because they are reeling from this deal. They made the agreement with us, and Trump knew they were going to make the agreement with us. And a lot of experts did know that as well, but they were silenced. They did not get a voice on mainstream media. They didn't get a voice in those same newspapers that I just quoted. They were ridiculed. They were laughed at. They were set aside. The experts they talked to said, oh, Trump is screwing up the world economy, and he's going to embolden China, and Europe's going to drop us, and this is going to shift the balance of power in the world. But what they were missing out on was the key fact, and we told you about this a couple of months ago, that if you're engaging in commerce, the most important person in the exchange is the customer, right? The customer is always right. And you've got to accommodate the customer, because if the person buying the product or the service is not included in the equation or feels like they're getting gypped and they want to go somewhere else, then you, as the person selling that product and service, you're screwed. You can't be in business without the customer, without the person buying things. They're the ones who are paying the bills and keeping the lights on. And right now on this planet, we are the single number one customer. We're the ones buying things. We're the ones who have to be accommodated. And Trump knew that. Trump knew that. You want access to our market? Then you need to play by our rules instead of us playing by your rules. That's all he said. It was that simple. And here we are. The fact that we are the number one customer and we get the benefit of wielding that power in negotiating these deals, that's huge. Add to the fact that we also happen to be the policeman and the security force. It's a no-brainer who is going to come out on top here. And the next step is China. And that's going to be something to witness. One more word here. All those networks and all those newspapers and all of those media platforms that had those experts who look like fools now. Just a thought. I could be wrong here. You got much bigger sets than me with a lot more lights and all those fancy graphics. But maybe, just maybe, you might want to find better experts.